G'day, we're here with Jeffrey Wright. And Jeffrey, I just wanted to ask you, Boardwalk Empire, you came into it in its fourth season, a well-established show. What was it like coming into into an already established show?
Easier than having to establish the show myself.
Yeah.
So much great work had been done in the previous seasons, and it was, it was somewhat intimidating because these actors were just kicking serious butt over in that series, and the writing was extraordinary. The production design was just beautiful, beautifully filmed. Some of the best writers in the business, executive producer Martin Scorsese. So, if you step into a situation like that, you don't want to detract from it. You want to try to bring something to it and contribute. And so, I was a little concerned about that, but incredibly supportive environment, and they were giving me this unbelievable character and this storyline that I thought was really kind of thrilling and complex and new and dangerous and strange and fresh. And so, oh man, oh bro, did you? Oh, there you are. I thought you'd
Yeah.
gone away.
Oh, okay. Oh,
Cool. And so it was all good. It was I one of the most enjoyable experiences I've had working was working on Boardwalk last season.
Had you seen much of the show beforehand?
I hadn't seen a lot of it. You know, I saw more once I was asked to be a part of it. That's just a function of my being sometimes, culturally illiterate, kind of too distracted by other things. But once I did take it in, I was just really, I really was blown away by it. There's a warmth to that show. It kind of sucks you in. The photography and the mood and the tones of the thing kind of pull you in, and you find in this incredibly dangerous, jagged, brutal world, you find some kind of strange comfort inside of it. And so I was really pulled into it once I checked it out.
Did you have to binge watch all the seasons as soon as you got the role?
Yeah, I did, because I was, one, I wanted to find out as much backstory as I could, obviously coming into it, but also I started luxuriating in these stories. I found them, really compelling and beautiful. It was just great stuff. It was some of the best stuff, I'd ever seen, dramatic stuff I'd ever seen on TV. And I think, I think that says a lot about this, the new form of long form dramatic series and things like that. But some really powerful stuff being done that has been done there over the last 4 years, and I hope we continue it this season.
Yeah. Now, the character that you play in the show, Dr. Valentin Narcisse, you come into the show as, I guess, no one's a good guy on the show. There's no really big heroes on the show, but you're like one of the villains of the series. You're like really, really bad. What was it like coming on as this villain, and sort of what did you think you sort of brought to the table in terms of a villain on a show where no one's really that good?
Yeah, well, I think he certainly is villainous. There's no question about it. But the wonderful thing about him is, in his mind, he's anything but. He's the opposite. So I tried to play with that idea a little bit. I guess initially I was thinking it might be interesting if I could shape a character who, the more polite he behaved, the more genteel he seemed, the more villainous and dangerous he actually was. So, they gave me this wonderful, this wonderful creature to kind of play within. And at the beginning, when I talked to Terrence Winter and Howard Corder, the head writer, about it, I said, yeah, don't mind playing a villainous, evil bastard, but I'd like his chief weapons to be his mind and his language. And so, that's what they came up with. So I like the opportunity to kind of give something of a a fresh spin on on the villain.
Yeah, and especially in light of the previous season, which had had the Gyp Rossetti sort of foil or antagonist on the show, who was a very live wire and very would just have these explosions. To see the sort of next season, you come along, who was this very sort of calm, collected, sort of almost in some ways reserved, but definitely still a little bit theatrical in the way he spoke and talked about himself. How did you sort of like weigh those two things up, sort of his sort of calmness, but also his sort of theatricality in the way he spoke about things?
Well, I think he's very much a performer. All these lovely layers to this guy, not because of what I did necessarily, but because the way he was, he was crafted. And he's a guy who is very much a performer in society. He puts on this mask, that hides his true character, hides his true self, and his performance is very much a way of disarming, his opponent. And so that's like really, lush stuff for an actor to be able to, wear several masks within a performance. And also, he does have this calmness because the idea was that it'd be more of a slow burn and that he insinuate himself and infiltrate in a way that that was strategic and considered and not not volatile to the point that he had to necessarily be taken out with a knife in the back before too long. I mean, Bobby Cannavale was fantastic as Gyp, and he definitely a different different type of animal than Dr. Narcisse. Both dangerous but in different ways. And I guess the idea was not to recreate what Gyp Rossetti had been, but to try to create something else that would be unpredictable in that, we didn't want to replicate what had been done before, despite how brilliant it was.
Yeah, I was, and I probably shouldn't have been with Boardwalk, but a little bit surprised. I thought, oh yes, a bit, character's very different to Gyp, but I thought sort of, oh, we're probably going to see like Gyp, he's going to die in the season final of season 4, and then next season we'll have someone else or something like that. But you didn't die. You're coming back for the final season with quite a different sort of role. What are you looking forward to with season 5 and the direction your character's going to go there?
Well, he didn't die at the end of the season, but he did suffer something of a spiritual gutting. He's a shell of what he was at the beginning, and in many ways he becomes everything that he despises. Whereas he looks down on Chalky as a servant, as he says, pretending to be a king, and he becomes servant to perhaps one of the foulest criminals in the whole game. The next season, this season is going to be interesting because obviously he stirred up a lot of chaos, and there may be one or several chickens coming home to roost for him. I can't say too much about what we're doing so far in the season, but I can tell you that there's going to be a lot of pressure exerted on the good doctor. So we'll have to see how he responds, how he maneuvers, and what the end of the day will bring for him.
Now, we're Gold Derby are an awards website, and boy, Boardwalk Empire on the production side of things have done brilliantly with awards and done really well there. I just want to ask you, you won the Emmy for Angels in America quite a few years ago. The same role you won a Tony for. What was it like actually winning an Emmy award?
Well, that was a long journey for me with that piece. I started that piece in 1993 on Broadway, and then I did it for a year and a half there, and then I guess about 10 years later, 2004, 2005, we ended up doing it on HBO, and it was great, obviously, to be recognized for that. But what was really cool about that that year, and all of the awards that I was fortunate enough to to receive, was that practically everyone in the show received the same awards. So it was kind of cool to kind of step into the situation and just kind of take over. Except of course there were other actors, supporting actors, who did beautiful work in the show, who were nominated in my category. Justin Kirk and Patrick Wilson. And I guess the only advantage I had over them was I had a 1.5 year rehearsal on the Broadway stage under my belt. But that's a piece that is not about any one individual other than perhaps the writer Tony Kushner. It's such an ensemble piece. It's such a collective piece. It's such a piece about community. In the way that it's played, in that we all play multiple characters, and but also in the world that it's trying to recreate, and the world that it's trying to celebrate. So, yeah, I won a bunch of awards, but so did everybody else.
And you could get an Emmy nomination for Boardwalk this year. I don't think Bobby Cannavale is the only character that was nominated there last year that's died. So there's a few openings in the slot in that category this year for people to sneak into, like yourself. If you get nominated for an Emmy, you have to submit an episode to get judged by the people judging that category. Is there an episode you have in mind from season 4 that you might submit?
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that. This is all very useful information. Thank you, man. Any one that I would submit, geez, I think the first episode that that Narcisse appears in is pretty cool. Terry Winter wrote that one. I believe it was the 2nd episode last year, and I just love how insinuating and how kind of subtle and subtly vicious he is in that episode, and it's just a wonderful kind of very graded introduction to a pretty a guy who seems to be able to handle his own in an environment like Boardwalk Empire. So why not go with the first?
Yeah, no, not about strategy. If I gave you any advice, it'd be if there's a scene that really sticks with people from the season, and the episodes sort of blur a bit for me, so I can't remember specific episodes now, but like you can think of like a scene that, oh yeah, people will remember that even after having watched a couple of other reels, that could be good. But you're in good hands with HBO. They usually help out a bit and things with submissions and stuff. And they've had a lot of success at the Emmys too.
Yeah. They've been around. They've been around this rodeo a couple of times. Yeah,
they have. Now you've done a lot of film work. I think most of your work's probably been in film, and you're now on TV with Boardwalk. How do you find working in television, sort of compared to film? And are there some sort of things you can get with storytelling through television that is maybe a bit harder with film?
Yeah, I don't know if I can generalize about TV, just from this Boardwalk experience, simply because of the quality of the writing. It's just extraordinary writing, and for what was really exciting throughout the process last year was that I sensed that there was this kind of collaborative process going on, whereby the writers were responding to what I had done in the previous episode, and they were kind of sending back volleys relative to that, and then I was obviously informed by what they were doing, and so there was this really wonderfully sympathetic relationship, kind of unspoken, because they're off in the writers' room doing their thing, mysterious thing, conjuring up these stories, however they do it, and then we're on set or wherever we're working in Harlem or in out in the boardwalk, doing our thing, and so It was unspoken, but it was really wonderful. I'd never really had an experience like that because I've never been in a situation where I'm working week to week and writers are working week to week. When we did Angels of America on Broadway, Tony Kushner at one point brought in scenes. One particular scene, I remember this dream scene, Heaven and Hell, and he brought that to the theater one day, and he kind of offered it to me as this gift, and he said, that he'd thought about the need for it, and he'd taken in some of the stuff that I'd been doing over the the course of the first run of Millennium Approaches, and so it was like this wonderful collaboration. But with Boardwalk, you kind of get not to that extent, simply because it's it's a different situation. But I got this wonderfully collaborative process happening that was just really satisfying. And so I say all that long-windedly to say that I don't know if I could necessarily derive any other understanding of what happens in TV from this experience. It's just been fantastic. I have worked in film, largely, and I guess the primary advantage of working on Boardwalk as opposed to working on most of the films I've worked on lately, is that the studio is about 5 blocks down the road here. It's like 5 blocks from where I am presently here in Fort Greene, Brooklyn. And so not only extraordinary writing, extraordinary cast, extraordinary setup, it also happens to be just a roll out of bed down the hill from my house.
I can even walk to work if you want to.
I rode my bike. Could have walked. Preferred to hop on the bike.
Oh, bike riding's good too. Yeah, we've got a couple of questions in the chat room. Firstly, from Secret 007, would you like to come back as Felix Leiter in the next James Bond movie?
Who wouldn't want to come back as Felix Leiter in the next Bond movies? I love love being a part of that franchise, and I was always an enormous fan of those movies prior to being involved in them. Thought Jack Lord, the first Felix Leiter was along with Miles Davis, like one of the coolest cats walking the planet in the late '60s. And so I was thrilled when I was invited to be a part the first time, and I'd come back at the drop of a hat.
Mm. And Justin Bernstein asked, would you like to return to Broadway?
Yeah, I suppose eventually. But I'll tell you, you can't do that lightly,
Mm.
Broadway. I was in a last Broadway show I was about 2 years ago at Lincoln Center, a new John Guare play called A Free Man of Color. And I was on stage for, I think, about 2 hours and 45 minutes practically straight. So then you compound that with, trying to get up in the morning to get your kids to school and, then try to pick them up after school, and, you try to, live, your life in between, and it becomes pretty pounding. It's incredibly satisfying, and there's no other place for an actor really to do his or her thing in that way than on the stage. But man, it's a lot of work. And then if you're successful, and ideally you are, it's a lot of work over the course of a year or a year and a half. It's pretty grueling. But there's no more exciting place to be, at 7:15, on a Thursday evening in New York than heading to a Broadway stage to hop up there and do your thing. So yeah, I'll be back at some point.
I can only imagine. Well, Jeffrey, thank you so much for spending time talking to us today about Boardwalk and the Emmys and television and all stuff like that. It's been really fun, and especially for me, a big fan of your work in Broken Flowers. I appreciate it. Yeah, I loved you in that. I thought that was fantastic.
Well, thank you, man. Thanks for having me. Thanks for your time, bro.
No worries at all, Jeffrey. Have it all the best.
You too. Right.